Hey everybody, it's Iron Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well, having a good start to the weekend here. Well, things have been rather interesting actually, if I'm being honest. I wasn't expecting to see what we've been seeing over here towards the Gulf Coast today. We had a marginal risk for severe weather, but the thing about this is I've been noticing quite a few tornado warnings throughout the last few hours here. So we're going to get into that, and then also we're going to be taking a look at what the first week of December could be like here. So make sure you're smashing that like button, decimating that subscribe button, and obliterating that share button, because here we go. So pretty much at this point, we're looking at an overview of what everything really at this point. To the left, we're looking at the Storm Prediction Center, mainly monitoring severe weather. And there's really no meso discussions to talk about here, so that's one good sign here. As I was saying earlier, there was a little pocket of activity over here that even stretched all the way towards Jacksonville, Florida, where we even had a tornado warning issued earlier. A couple tornadoes seem to have been reported, but they haven't shown up on here yet. We'll see them most likely over here towards the Panhandle. And then, of course, if we look over to the right, we're looking at winter weather becoming more and more prevalent across the northwest here, especially towards the northern tier of the Rocky Mountains. Also, another thing to make note of is the high wind threat that is going to be taking place over here towards the desert southwest here, especially towards eastern New Mexico and to the Texas Panhandle as well. So a lot of stuff going on here still. Not quite as crazy as about a week or so ago, but still nonetheless here. Definitely showing signs of the times as far as our weather pattern is concerned. And we're going to continue to see that as time goes on here. So here we are looking at the 300 millibar height now. During the winter time, and this is now the official start of meteorological winter, so I'm shifting more to this height now. There's actually three different heights that you would look at. During the solstice, during the summer and winter solstice, you end up changing the heights here. During the summer you look at 200, during the winter you look at 300, and then during the both the equinoxes, spring and fall, you look at 250. Hence why I was showing College of DuPage, because they were the only one that I had available to me that showed 250. But enough talking about that. This is basically what we're going to be looking at for the next few months through the rest of the season here, really. But we'll start out with the GFS here, or the Euro, excuse me. Euro is to the left, GFS to the right, for anyone who doesn't know, by the way. But if we go ahead and take a look at things here, you can see still plenty more troughing to go here, especially to start out the week. See a little bit of a jet streak trying to develop here. Nothing of major concern to be had with this, though. If we were seeing this jump a little further to the south, I'd be looking at those with some pretty wide open eyes here. But so far, mainly leaning towards a positive PNA setup where it's warm out west, cooler out to the east here to start out here. And then as we go into the next little section here, a little bit beyond 5 days here, that's when we start to see a little bit of a pattern shift begin to develop as we head towards the 10th. There's also a storm system that I'm going to be monitoring towards this point, and you can kind of see it beginning to emerge here with this trough. I do have some questions as to how this will end up panning out here, but this could be another big wintry setup, particularly across the high plains here. Well, not the high plains, but more so the Midwest here and some of the central plains, I should say. And then as time goes on here, we could see increased activity towards the southeast, maybe even as far as severe weather is concerned. Also, wintry side of this system, if this holds out. Keep in mind, we're looking 210 hours out. And as time goes on, as we continue to go all the way to the end of the run, we can kind of see that we're kind of back in that little setup where we're dealing with another positive PNA. It's going to be kind of a flip-floppy type pattern through the first half of the month here. GFS is kind of showing a similar look starting out, but as we continue to go forward here, things do begin to have a couple of discrepancies, especially since the newest GFS has just finished coming in. So for the most part, like I said, first 120 hours, it's pretty congruent to the Euro here. You see that ridging beginning to develop here as time goes on, as we start to get to about 5 days out. Then that next big trough rolls in, and really here's the distinct difference here is that that trough looks like it's a little bit deeper, like it pushes a little bit further to the south here and really starts to get itself wound up here as we go into next week here. So like I said, definitely going to be watching that. And if this scenario plays out here, could even see some snow flurries a little bit further to the south. And it looks like looks like the ingredients do come together. The way these contour lines are starting to tighten up a little bit compared to previous runs, it does give me the thought that the increased amount of lift could come into play here. The real question at this point will be moisture. We'll kind of get into that a little bit in the video. But this looks like a really stout storm system as this continues to push off towards the northeast here. Could be a big winter setup. And we'll kind of see how that translates towards the mid levels of the atmosphere, because that's a key factor as well. So we go beyond the range of the Euro. We kind of see this crazy setup here where we're almost seeing a little bit of a divide begin to develop here. And as a result, it could cause a little bit longer standing pattern here where it could be cooler. Also, could be a little bit drier here, depending on where you are. Florida could still be active as far as weather is concerned. But up north, it looks like things are going to be a little bit quieter to start out the middle of the month if this trend holds. Keep in mind, 318 hours out. Let's continue to go on here. Eventually, this doesn't hold, and we see another big storm system, deep trough beginning to develop here. And we're back into disarray as we get towards the end of the run. No real surprises there with that run, though. We go to the 500 millibar here. We're going to set this into motion on both of these. So we'll start out moving the GFS since it's a little bit further. And then we'll have the Euro go along with it. And pretty much we're going to be seeing a similar thing going on in regards to, like I said, the first 5 days. Once we get to about 10 days is when we start, or 7 or 8 days, that's when we start to see a couple of key differences here. Like I said, here is the Euro to the left, GFS to the right. I know it's a little bit much to keep track of, but one thing I'm definitely kind of capturing from both of these runs here, as far as December 10th is concerned, it could be another big moment there in regards to the weather. So this is definitely going to be something that warrants attention, because I've been seeing this trend for at least the last 2 to 3 days now. We'll be, of course, keeping an eye on it, but we're still a week out, though, so a lot of room for changes. But a lot of congruency between the 300 and the 500 here. Not really much of a surprise to be had there. So I guess we'll go onward to the next bit here, and we'll take a look at the air masses. If we make our comparison here, it's going to be pretty similar. I'm going to set both of these. I'm going to set this into a loop first. And you can see how we're dealing with that warm and cold air. Once that ridging starts, you see the warm air masses starting to dominate here. But look how big that storm system ends up getting around the 10th here. You see almost a look of these storms wanting to phase together. I'm going to try to pause this real quick. So here's our first storm system right here. But watch what happens as I go forward with this. You see this other little low begin to develop here on the far northern reaches here. These two interact, maybe start to phase. And as a result here, this is definitely an interesting look here. Something that we're going to have to be watching more and more. I'll probably be updating on this setup maybe twice a week leading up to it if this holds. But fact of the matter is, from the 10th to the 12th, I'm going to have to be watching very closely, because this could bring significant winter weather. Also could bring the lake effect machine into play here. And of course, we'll also have to watch the interior northeast as well, even, because it looks like cold air is in play for this as well. Moisture is going to be the question, but lift and cold is definitely in abundance here. I'm going to do the same thing with the GFS here. And what we're gonna probably end up seeing throughout the first little bit here is a lot of congruency between the Euro and the GFS. But as time goes on here, here's something interesting to note. It takes a little bit longer for that to develop, and it's not two systems. It's not two low pressures. There's not a low pressure to the north. There was only one, but that low pressure also becomes really strong in either sense. It's gonna be one of those little things where we end up seeing a couple of different scenarios being played out with models here in regards to this setup here we're looking at now. But look how deep that cold air mass is. That's going to that's going to make for some pretty brutal conditions here. Also, I still think this would affect the lake effect machine, although maybe not to the same extent as what we were seeing. Here it is again. I'm going to go and pause it this time so we can look at it. It's also another thing to make note of is that this looks like a fast mover, but you can tell that this is a much stronger low pressure based off of how these contour lines are kind of tightening up together around the center here, which would be at this point here. So we're going to keep this moving, and you can see it really just starting to take in that cold air. If a secondary low did develop with this, boy, this could be a huge problem if this scenario plays out. Either way, this also may allot for a coastal storm as well. So this could even bring New York City, Philadelphia, New Jersey, and many other areas towards the coastal Northeast into play for potential winter weather. But it's also going to be a quick mover, but it could be a heavy hitter at the same time. Then, enough fixating onto that, as we start to look at the next pattern ahead here, we see some more colder air. This could also be a Ohio Valley, maybe Midwest type system if this holds out. And then we start to shift into I'm guessing this is going to be more of a positive PNA. But this is also where I talked about maybe some stratospheric heating, maybe a polar vortex beginning to take shape here. We talked about that in our winter outlook and our December outlook. The links to that will be in the top right corner here, so keep an eye out for that. We get into further detail with that there. So now we're going to go ahead, take a look at some moisture returns. This is where we start to shift more so towards the severe weather side of things. What we're going to be keeping an eye out for here is any of these little moisture noses. This isn't really going to be super prevalent starting out, but as time goes on, as we go later, I think as we get closer towards the 10th, we might have a look at something like this beginning to emerge here. Really, what I'm looking for is a much more pronounced moisture nose, something like this right here. The only question is, will we get the other ingredients? I think kinematics are going to be in play, but the problem will be instability. I think we'll have lift, but it's really going to be the timing. How will this all blend together? But right now, it's just kind of uncertain. There's nothing I can really just latch onto and say, okay, this is going to happen, at least not based off the Euro. GFS may paint a slightly different picture here. So we'll go forward with this. And you see kind of a moisture nose here, but not a very strong moisture nose. You want to see those dew points getting into the 60s, basically this area in the blue here. And we just don't really see too much of that. Maybe towards the Gulf Coast we could look at that. Maybe we could look at that beginning to occur, but even so, this is, however, enough moisture to maybe get some snow going. Question is, where would it occur? And then these dew points being so warm here, like I said, there will probably be a chance for maybe some wet snow, some snow flurries over towards the Tennessee Valley even. But it's a lot still up in the air because, I mean, like I said, look how far out we are. But this does bring enough moisture into maybe a coastal, to support a coastal winter event here. Really, timing is going to be key. I think as it stands right now, the way the cold and the moisture is set up here, we might have to keep our eyes open here over towards the New England region in general. After that point, we see another moisture nose begin to develop here, and maybe towards the Gulf Coast once again. Could be a little bit more severe weather as we get towards 300 hours out, and we'll have to keep an eye out for everything else beyond that point. Looks like towards the end of this run here, we start to get really dry and also really cold too. So it's going to be another thing to keep an eye out for as well. So now we've looked at these things. Go ahead and look at the temperatures here. No real surprise what we're going to end up seeing in all honesty. But we're going to just put both of these into a loop here. If I can get this to stay where I want it. So this is what the GFS is doing. This is going from 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and here comes that big cool down after that storm system around the 12th. Look at how this cold air starts to invade from that point. And you're going to see the same thing on the Euro here too. Once we get towards the 10th and beyond here, just look at how that cold air starts to just take over. Look at that. Boom, there it is. That big cold shot. I think that could be signs of our polar vortex trying to take shape here. Like I said, I'm probably going to be updating this outlook every couple of days because this could be something significant here. We'll see what ends up happening with it, but of course, you know how we do here. But that being said, it's definitely something that we're going to be keeping an extra close eye on here, and definitely something that you should be keeping an extra close eye on here. So make sure you're staying tuned. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the potential for thunderstorms, lightning flash density over the course of the next 10 days. This is only a model run. The only model that has this feature is the Euro here. So we're going to go forward from that point. So starting out, not really much of anything. Here's that area of interest that I was looking at towards the 10th. It's not great coverage there, but there is something to be had. A lot of that's going to stay offshore though. And then from that point, it's not really much to be had. So this could be quiet. Maybe the next 10 days might be quiet, but chances of severe weather still are there. I'm still not too sure if I'm latching on to this look here right now. But if there's any day that I would be watching, maybe it would be the 9th for severe weather. I think that cold air starts to rush in really quickly behind this front here. But it'll be interesting to see just how this ends up playing out, especially considering the fact that this is the 12Z Euro, not the 18Z. 18Z probably is just now starting to come in at the time of this video. And on top of that, it only goes up to 90 hours. So kind of tough to work with that. Last things to look at here will be the precipitation rate. We'll start out with the Euro, then we'll go to the GFS here. So basically, with the Euro, no real surprises with what we're looking at here. Mainly towards the weekend, we're going to be seeing a lot of activity out west. Eventually, business will pick up out towards the east. I think the Euro kind of has the best chance for a severe weather setup, more so towards the 9th. 10th also has some potential, albeit very limited. I do think instability will be limited in both scenarios here. It kind of leans a little bit more towards a wintry weather event. What needs to be watched mostly, and we'll put this out of its loop real quick, is the track of this low pressure. The track of this low pressure is going to be the key to everything. We're still seeing that classic case of the moisture outrunning the cold here, but the thing is, if this low tracks a little bit further to the south here, we could get some increased thunderstorm activity. We could also see an increase in snowfall. Maybe even Dallas could get into the action with that, depending on where this low tracks. Where it is right now, we could see Oklahoma City getting into play here. But if we see it maybe get towards that Oklahoma-Arkansas line more so than the triple point here, the tri-state region between Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, that could turn into a really interesting scenario. It's still going to end up curving off to the north and east here, so this does help activate the Great Lakes on the backside of this, but this also kind of nixes the coastal storm threat as well. Also, if this also changes track a little bit more further to the south, like we were talking about, it also will help bring in the idea of a coastal system here. But with this right here, the cold is going to be lagging way too far behind the moisture, and we're just going to be seeing rain and only rain with this. GFS, however, painting a much different picture here. So we'll go ahead and roll this forward, starting out. Pretty much a similar deal. We already know what the deal is. Mainly going to be seeing heavy snow towards the Rockies, north of the border. But watch what happens as we watch this system develop here. Tracks further to the north, but because we don't have that other low to the north as well, we see a little bit more cold air in play here, and the moisture is not outrunning it. This storm system has a shot at bringing some snow flurries, maybe even as far south as North Georgia. And then on top of that, that low begins to really deepen at this point, and you'll start out as rain over here towards the northeast, and you would end out as snow. I don't think this would, as it stands right now, be a heavy snow event, but it's definitely something that we'll have to watch. due to the fact that there's always these little minute changes that begin to come in, and this makes for a lot of little last minute tweaks here. You could see some heavy snow after all, but of course, with us being over a week out, have to take some of this with a grain of salt, but also don't disregard it. As we go from that point onward, here's that cold blast beginning to come in here, and what I'm concerned about is a little low pressure that could develop here, and this could increase snow potential for the Appalachians here, maybe even some heavy snow. This classic case of a southern snow system trying to take shape here towards the end of this model run. It's not uncommon to see this during this time of year, but this setup and this weather pattern kind of helps lean into that a little bit. Will it happen exactly as this? Probably not, but we're going to be, of course, like I said before, reiterating it a bunch of times here, we're going to be watching this really closely. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button, obliterate that subscribe button, and decimate that share button. Till then, it's been Metalhead Weatherman. Hopefully you guys have a good evening. I'll see you guys soon.